It's the 4th of January. Yeah! And I'm going out for a coffee. That's about as exciting as it gets on a Saturday night. Yeah, I've got to be up at 6:30 in the morning. Got an early morning class and an afternoon class. Only 5 hours. Anyway, I have to go and get a bag of rice because we somehow ran out of rice. I'm going to go and do the same thing that I did the last day. Just do a little nip around, maybe stop off in 1 or 2 coffee shops and see how it goes. There's a heavy load. So I'm going to set this to a Jan Tiersen background, put the Jan Tiersen background on low and see how it comes out. I think I might give it a kind of a little kind of a blind boy feel to it, and now I'm just some guy ranting into a camera instead of a sock as he calls it, whilst I meander down the back lanes of Vietnam in search of nothing really, nothing in particular, just to get out of the apartment and stretch the legs. Just before I left, I stumbled across something as if by chance. You know, I'm a fan of Russell Brand, and at Russell Brand, one of his more popular books is called Recovery. It's one of the only books that I actually brought with me when I came traveling. It's basically the 12 steps. It's the big book, except in far more digestible terms, easy to understand, none of the spiff spaff. And he has stopped, well, he's still doing his podcast, but now he's doing these online courses. So I posted on Facebook if anybody wants to join me. I think there's like a 12-day recovery program, online event. I was also then steered towards this guy that he's had on his podcast called Will Hoff. And this is the guy who's able to withstand extreme temperatures. Like, he ran to the top of Mount Everest in his boxer shorts for the laugh. Well, just to prove that he's got like practically subnormal superpowers. This guy, I guess maybe elevated a bit by Russell Brand, but he would have been a bit famous beforehand, has now got millions of followers from around the world following his techniques, which I think includes like cold water submersion, breathing and meditation therapies, and some other stuff like that. There's a course online that you can do. It's I'm not promoting this or anything. I'm just seriously thinking about doing it myself. OneCommune/recovery for Russell Brand, and you'll see the Will Hoff link in that. Anyway, yeah, these are the kind of people that I enjoy listening to whilst I'm at the gym or whilst I'm going about driving around the city or whatever the hell it is. I guess everybody around the world is more or less doing, a lot of people are doing the same thing. Turning away from Netflix, turning away from conventional forms of media, and now just finding far more entertainment in one guy talking into a sock. Again, a reference to Blind Boy and what he does. But like, if you look at Joe Rogan, who now, he himself says he's the new form of Fox Media. Like, he couldn't quite compare himself to Fox Media. It's that more people prefer to get their news via like unqualified online commentators. There's nothing special about Joe Rogan. He used to do some cage fighting. He's a sports commentator. He's more like a taxi driver than anything else. And he brings people on the show, smokes a couple of joints and just talks randomly for 3 hours, touching on all types of different topics. Never been too controversial, all on the whim. And for people who end up watching and listening to that, as well as Blind Boy, and then the other guy I listen to, David Nars, you begin to notice that your mindset is gently altered from what would otherwise be something that's incredibly bland. If you keep yourself plugged into Netflix and YouTube and other such things like that, if you're not careful, your brain's just going to go to absolute mush. And I have noticed my brain gone to mush. Of course, like, I get paid to throw a sticky ball around the classroom. I don't do anything to really challenge myself. Some of you might think that living in a city and doing things like this is challenging, and to be honest, it is in a couple of in different ways, you know. This is my newfound outlet of just wandering around with a video camera talking into it, knowing full well that there's 99% of the chance that I'm just talking to myself, but I'm therapeutically talking to myself. I'm also giving myself a snapshot that I can look back on in years to come and say that's how I was, or that's where I was. And I hope to kind of paint a picture of my mental state now, for fear that I might ever go back to what I was before, which was batshit crazy on drugs and of course alcohol. It's the likes of Will Hoffman and Russell Brand who teach us how to control our minds in far greater ways than we could ever believe. And it's just a coincidence that I stumbled onto both of them this evening. I am going to sign up now that I think about it, seeing as how I spent so much time talking on my podcast about it. Let's stop and take a little look at the lake. Yeah, it's money well spent. Look, there's a massage parlor over there. I don't mean the sexy kind, I mean the normal kind. There's a so I was actually going to go for a jog, but my belly's full. We had that Irish stew that Kay makes. Anyway, look, let me go get a coffee and I'll start talking again. There's the boys. Hold on, hold my hammer. So this is one of the main coffee shops I like to hit up over on this side of the lake. Hello. Hello. Hey. Thank you. I like to sit outside. Still got the Christmas vibe going on. Still doing. Not such a bad place to be living if you think about it. You know, if you can get over the loneliness, basically. It does get a bit lonely over here, and I haven't spoken about that before. When I rang my sponsor, my ex-sponsor, before Connor came into this world, I rang him from the Highlands coffee shop across the road from the hospital. So Kay went in for her operation at 10 a.m. and I went across the road to Highlands Coffee. Whilst over there, Sarah came across an old YouTube video which she put up onto the WhatsApp group, and I watched it just moments before my own son was born into this world. And this is a YouTube video that I made in 2007 and I had forgotten all about. And I watched as I myself in 2007, so this is me when I was 22, for the love of God, shooting a video around Dunganstown, and I got lonely because I missed what I had. And then when I zoomed in on Dad and I asked him to say a few words to the camera, as if somehow knowing that it was someday going to be viewed by me before my own son came into the world, he said, "Merry Christmas to all the future generations of the Maguires." Like he was talking to me directly, and he was talking to his unborn son. I got sad and lonely, and I rang my sponsor, and he said, there's a difference between loneliness and aloneness. That if you're suffering from loneliness, you've essentially gone into the territory of self-pity, and that's a useless emotion to have. Whereas aloneness, if you are suffering from aloneness or enduring aloneness, you are happy enough with yourself, you're comfortable in your skin, you just so happen to be alone. Check out that. Come on. Yeah, that's a yogurt coffee. And how can you be alone when you've got the trappings of a good life? Now, I'm not alone anymore. I've got a girl, obviously. Kay's in my life. I've got a baby in my life. I work with people. I've got different expats that I can call up at any time for coffee, living in my building. I'm probably about the same level of loneliness, or experiencing the same level of loneliness that anybody is in this day and age. Like when we're surrounded by these contraptions. Russell Brand was saying the other day how he finds himself picking up his iPhone and he looks into it, and what's he looking for? What's in there that we find fascinating? That we spend so much of our time in this new virtual world, closed off from who we are, and not fully enrapturing our potential. It's like the potential that we have is something that we know it's there, but we don't want to touch it because who knows what it will be. Who knows what's around the corner. Best to just like drift on automatic and not worry too much about what's around the corner. That wasn't exactly what he was saying in a nutshell, but I guess his overall message is not to worry too much about the past, and to know that if you're in addiction, that's something that you can close down, and that you come to a point where you realize it's no longer manageable for you to have an element of your life where a substance takes over and you can't keep your life on track. And that then connected to Will Hoff, the guy who shows you that through meditation and other forms of therapy you can unleash a form of happiness that we had never known possible before. That if you do keep on watching and reading and listening in tune to what is not so far away from your fingertips, you can find a better peace of mind. And that's what sobriety is about for me. I'm going to buy those two packages, the Will Hoffman and the Russell Brand, and I'm going to let you know how it goes. For now, I'm just going to drink my yogurt shake. Actually, I did say that I was going to talk about the newspapers while I'm out and about, so let's go through them very quickly. Today is quite a strange day. Around the world, people are getting ready for war. The lunatic that is Donald Trump just sent a missile drone and shot out the second in command, Qasem Soleimani, the second in command to the Iranian leader. Oh God, his name is always so hard to remember. Hold on. Al Khamenei. Anyway, this guy has been lauded around the world for a long time. He's got millions of Twitter fans, and the act of murdering him on his way in a manner which is completely outside the scope of normal diplomacy can warrant any type of reaction from a highly volatile country such as Iran. Just watch this space. I'm not really going to go into any more than that. There's pages and pages about what we expect now will be Iran's reaction to that. When I read on, then the next thing that I'm only going to talk for 2 or 3 minutes on different things that's happening. The one other thing that I found interesting was about this guy, the CEO Carlos Ghosn, who was in Japan up on fraud charges. He was the ex-CEO of Nissan, and he was under house arrest. Now, the Japanese government had taken his passports away from him. He holds French, Brazilian and Japanese passports, and they thought that they had them all locked away, but alas, he had a passport in a suitcase which was only accessible by his lawyers, in which case the suitcase was cracked and the passport was accessed. He was not smuggled out in a violin box like some people speculate. He just got on a private jet to Turkey, and then from there I think boarded a plane using his normal French passport. So a lot of people around the world are saying yes, he's dead right to have done that, and in a way Japan could well be behind it, because in actual fact they have a 99% success rate at prosecution level, and
the case against Carlos Ghosn was not airtight. So there's a lot more that could have happened, but we don't know how he was smuggled out. We just know that he was smuggled out. I'll see if I can find one more story. So I'll just read this directly. It's about the wildfires, and this will be the last story. At the moment, there's raging wildfires throughout the New South Wales. So as the raging wildfires that have engulfed much of eastern Australia approached Samantha Neeshaw's home, she, like many others, looked to nearby sources of water. Staring in her swimming pool, the marine biologist hit upon an idea. If the fires reached the hamlet of Fisherman's Paradise, she would take her scuba tank to the pool and remain submerged until the worst was over. She thought such an eventuality unlikely. Miss Neeshaw believed that her community, 140 miles south of Sydney, would be spared the worst of the damage. It had rarely burnt before. Then on New Year's Day it did. The afternoon sky blackened and embers began to fall from the sky, whipped along by the howling wind. Miss Neeshaw desperately scurried around her property, garden hose in hand, putting out the small fires started by the embers. For a while she was successful. Then the trees in her garden crackled into flame. Left with no chance of escape, she jumped into her pool, pulled on her breathing mask, and sank to the bottom. She sat underwater as the firestorm raged, willing herself to stay there as the world above her turned red. 10 minutes passed. Sam, you've got to stay down, she recalls saying to herself. Eventually, she ventured to the surface. The heat was intense, the smoke thick and choking. She was forced to return to the pool several times for oxygen and to cool down. She counts herself as one of the lucky ones. She saved her life in her home. She later told Sean Carter, the architect who designed her home, well, you don't really feel anything, you just know that you've got to do things. It all just happens around you. Many others were not as unfortunate. The Australian military began a mass evacuation yesterday involving thousands of people left stranded by the fires, with police forcing residents to leave towns at risk. The total of the dead and missing since New Year's Day has risen to 40. Navy ships and army helicopters have moved more than 1,000 people stranded in Mallacoota, Victoria, after fires and debris blocked roads out of the holiday town. And that's it from the confines of the lake.
So I was in town the other day for one of the meetings, and I came across this chap traveling with his son, and his son is half Filipino, half Australian. So this is a father and son traveling together. He was a 21-year-old student from that's where we get our coconuts after our lunch by the lake. He was a 21-year-old student studying actuarial science. He's got a 96% average and he's incredibly intelligent. The father was a barrister, makes good money, and could afford to send him to a private school for $40,000 a year. I was talking to him about my fear of what will happen as to whether I go back to Ireland, if that's possible. The reality of it is that I will end up spending a ton of money either renting in Dublin or commuting. And if I'm commuting, it's an extra 3 hours on top of my daily grind. Or if I'm renting in Dublin, it's 40 to 50% of my salary at least. That includes Kay. Kay would have to be working full-time too. That would be going on pointless on rent, which would give us zero return and would just go into the pockets of the landlords. In the long run, we could both end up with jobs at 40,000. If we were both on 30 or 40,000, we would live a relatively comfortable life. We might have to work a little bit harder, but it would mean that Connor would have access to a better education. On the one hand, it seems like that's a good option. Go back to Ireland, get the free education that comes with it. Connor will grow up as an Irish man with an Irish education and an Irish personality. On the other hand, we could go to the Philippines. We could have a house built within the next couple of years, and we could live without a mortgage, hoping that whatever money we can make through online commerce or online teaching, or maybe the occasional 6-month contract overseas, whatever it is, to make a life for ourselves as modern day nomads, spending 50% of our time in Ireland and 50% of our time in the Philippines. He balked at the suggestion. Nah, he said, not possible. Philippines is destroyed. He said that no person in their right mind would think that that would be a good place to go to invest money. I said, I'm not trying to invest money. I keep yourself a low profile. You can live a bloody good life. There's a petrol station I need to go to. I didn't even indicate there. Right, so this is how the petrol stations work. So keeping in mind that our dollar is 22,000, I'm going to fill my tank for, I think it's $5, maybe $6, $4. Just under $5. Trying to get over to the co-op. This is where I have to go to buy a bag of rice, because it's a specific type of rice that she wants. When she wants a specific type of rice, that's what she gets. Plus we're going to try and get a couple of Kit Kats. There's a site inside A's.
So this guy has to put a plastic bag around my... Okay. Oh, he actually believes I'm not going to try and rob him. Right. There's the goddamn sugary things that I like. And I'm not going to buy the other sugary things that I like. There we go. This stuff is the business. Mango is cheapest chips over here. $1.20 for some eggs. Can't have any alcohol. That's the specific type of rice, very specific. I only sell it here. She told me to come and try and find some Kit Kat Chunkies because they're like 5 cents cheaper here. They're not the ones that I wanted. Oh my god, they're fucking 3,000 cheaper, which is a grand total of I think 10 cent, 5 cent even. Right. $4.
Promotion. One promotion.
Two for the price of one.
Promotion.
So I need to stop off in the vape club. Get myself some liquid. Hello!
Hi.
I'm just making a quick little YouTube video. I'm here to buy some. So there you go, another little ramble out about the town. A pleasant enough evening, especially for considering it's January the 4th. I imagine everybody's back at home freezing their balls off. So going back to what I was saying there earlier about like constantly worrying about whether I should try and go back to Ireland and build a life for myself there or get something in the Philippines and look at the Philippines in the long term. The guy that I met said you have to go back to Ireland. He said that education is the most important thing that you can give to somebody, to a baby. And when he had his baby, he realized he had to go back. Easier for him to say. I think he had some post-qualification experience at that point. I just don't know where I will be when I get back. But you know, he said to me, he said it's fear. And for the most part, he's right. Like, I am afraid of going back because I'm afraid of the stories that people tell me about how expensive it is. And the long and short of it, no matter where you are, once you bloody have a roof over your head, 90% of the way there. So I shouldn't let fear be something that should detract from the overall decision. I think in the life in the Philippines could be nice, because when I hear descriptions from Kay and her nephews and nieces, they talk about like New Year's, this magnificent time of the year where like all the neighbors start on one end of the street or one end of the estate and go from house to house having drinks and eating finger food or whatever it is. And if you don't invite your neighbors over to your house, or if your neighbors don't invite you over to theirs, then you're not part of the community. And it sounded to me like the community spirit is far more alive in the Philippines than it is back at home. So there's so many different factors that I need to consider before. But first and foremost, I think we need to get through this year. Then we should probably check out the Philippines, move over there for 6 months and see what it's like, then move to Ireland for 6 months at the same time. If we move back to Ireland, Kay's going to have to get her work experience in the Philippines first, and I have to decide what fucking course I'm going to do. Anyway, that's the end of this video. Over and out.